Ikki was a pathetic loser who was cast out by his parents for being worthless and born without magic. One day, he escaped, but found himself in a snowstorm and was about to get isekai'd when the strongest swordsman suddenly arrived and saved him with some David Goggins-style motivational speech. After that, he trained every day like Goku and became the strongest swordsman. But he hid his ability from everyone until one day he got rizzed by a hot woman who was ready to marry him and would do anything for him.
Do you want to?
Oh my god.
This all begins after a long day of hard training. Ikki went back to his dorm room, but as soon as he opened the door, he saw the last thing he expected: a super hot girl standing there. She wasn't some random student either. Before she could even scream, Ikki felt lucky he was wearing white pants to hide the situation. Instead of saying sorry, this guy thought it would be a good idea to act cool, so he took off his shirt to even it out. Bad idea. She slapped him right away. Later, in the school office, the director explained how serious this was. That girl he saw wasn't just anyone, she was Princess Stella from the Vermillion Kingdom. If this caused drama, it could start a war between nations. Stella demanded an apology, but Ikki didn't take it seriously. He said it wasn't a big deal. She got so angry, her body lit up in flames. She walked up, ready to burn him, and that's when Ikki panicked. He shouted that she was so beautiful, he couldn't stop staring. That random compliment shocked her, and her fire powers cooled down as she blushed like crazy. Ikki was still wondering what she was doing in his room when the director told them they'd be living together from now on. Back in the dorm, Stella freaked out, yelling that she would never share a room with some weak, ugly loser. The director said they could settle things properly like knights through a duel, but Stella wanted more. She told Ikki that the loser of their fight would become the winner's personal servant forever. She got up close and asked if he understood. He didn't want to, but Ikki agreed. As they walked to the battle arena, Stella heard people talking about how Ikki was the only student with zero magic power. She started wondering why he even bothered dreaming about being a knight after failing last year. When the match started, the arena glowed. Ikki brought out his sword called Intetsu, and Stella summoned her flame sword, Leviathan. The moment the duel began, Stella charged at him fast. Ikki dodged her attack just in time. She kept swinging, and fire was everywhere, but Ikki blocked and avoided every move. No matter how many times she came at him, he defended himself. Then, he told her he could see how hard she'd trained and respected her skills. That surprised her, but she still said there was no way he could beat her sword style. But Ikki had already figured out how her moves worked. He copied her technique and attacked her using her own style. She knocked him back, but then he explained how people always thought he was worthless, so he spent his whole life studying other people's sword techniques. That's how he learned to copy their moves. He called this ability Blade Steel. Stella came at him again, but Ikki noticed her attacks were slower now. She wasn't fighting with full power anymore. That's when he used another secret move called Irregular Guarding to block her completely and go in for the win. Everyone thought it was over, but when he hit her, nothing happened. Stella's body wasn't hurt at all. His sword didn't work on her. She told him that because of her natural powers, she could win no matter what. She started calling up her strongest flame move to finish him off, but something snapped in Ikki. He started dodging all her attacks perfectly, like he was on autopilot. Then, with one big move, he gave everything he had and landed the final hit, knocking her down. But right after, he passed out from using all his energy. A few hours later, the director went to check on Stella. She said it was the first time anyone had ever beaten her. She didn't understand how Ikki, ranked F, could win. That's when the director told her the truth: Ikki's family had messed with the system. After he joined the school, they changed the rules so only magic counted. Since Ikki didn't have strong magic, he always failed. As the sun went down, Stella walked into Ikki's room. She tried waking him, but when she saw his strong back muscles, she couldn't help herself and touched him. Then Ikki rolled over and accidentally pinned her under him. She was right in front of his abs and had to stop herself from touching him more. But then she remembered how he saw her naked earlier, so she kept touching him to get even. One little touch almost made her lose it. Right then, Ikki woke up, and Stella screamed so loud she hit her head. Ikki helped her and put a band-aid on her forehead. Stella said sorry for judging him and admitted he beat her fair and square. Ikki then reminded her that she lost, so she should start being his servant like she promised. She got mad and yelled that she'd do whatever weird stuff he asked. Ikki smiled and told her his first request: stay as his roommate. She blushed and acted like she didn't want to, but then said she was okay with it. She didn't want to shake his hand though. Instead, she gave him a fist bump. That's how their friendship officially began. The next day at school, a girl ran up to Ikki. It was his little sister, Shizuku. She shouted that it had been too long, pushed him down, and kissed him right in front of everyone. Stella stood there confused like, what is happening? Shizuku said being away from her brother for 4 years hurt so much that not even sleeping next to him could fix it. Everyone around them freaked out. Stella grabbed Shizuku and yelled at Ikki to stop being so weird. Shizuku just smiled and pulled out her water sword, ready to fight. Stella wasn't backing down either. She summoned her fire sword and told Shizuku that her chest was as flat as her blade. Shizuku clapped back and said Stella's chest looked like a cow's. They both got mad and rushed at each other, blowing up the entire hallway during their fight. As punishment, the school made them scrub every single toilet in the building. While they were cleaning, they kept insulting each other. Stella called Shizuku a flat pillow, and Shizuku called her a tiny firecracker. Then, before they finished, Shizuku told Stella to stay out of her family's business. She said Ikki had always been treated like trash and ignored by everyone. After saying that, she walked off. Later that night, Shizuku went to her dorm room and met her new roommate, a beautiful person named Alice. While Stella was still thinking about what Shizuku said earlier, she couldn't stop wondering what she meant. So, when Ikki showed up, she straight up asked him, "Were you ever treated like you didn't matter?" Her question hit him hard. He was shocked at first, but then decided to open up about his past. As they walked together through the school campus, Ikki started telling her a story. He asked if she had ever heard of a legendary samurai named Ryuma. She said yes, and then it hit her. Ryuma's last name was Kurogane, the same as Ikki's. That's when she realized Ryuma was his grandfather. Ikki explained that for generations, his family was known for producing powerful magical fighters called blazers. But when he was born without any magic talent, his whole family started treating him like trash, like he wasn't even there. The more they ignored and hurt him, the more miserable his life became. One day, he tried to run away into the snowy mountains, thinking maybe freezing to death would be better than staying. But while he was lost in the cold, full of anger and sadness, his grandfather suddenly appeared and told him something he would never forget. His grandpa said, "So you're mad about being the weakest? Good. That means you haven't given up. Don't turn into a hopeless, bitter old man like me. Even weak creatures like us can reach for the moon." Those words gave Ikki the strength to keep going. After that, Ikki made a promise to himself he'd never give up, and one day become someone who could give hope to others too. Since nobody ever trained him, he started teaching himself from scratch, training every single day just like Stella did when she was younger. But his family still didn't accept him. They thought someone like him could never become a knight. So they forced the school's old director to change the system, adding a magic score requirement, just to make sure Ikki would fail and never graduate. Later that day, Stella was cooking dinner, but when she realized Ikki was in the shower, she decided to sneak in just to mess with him. Classic fan service. The next morning, the two of them were training again. After dodging and blocking each other's attacks, the practice ended, and Stella got a message saying her first real fight was coming up. Ikki, still confused, started wondering why he had woken up passed out in the shower with shampoo spilled next to him. When he asked Stella about it, she played dumb and acted like she had no idea what he was talking about. The school bell rang, and as Ikki walked away, Stella, acting all shy like a nervous girlfriend, tried to ask him out. But before she could even finish her sentence, Ikki got a message from Shizuku inviting him out, and he said yes. Stella was completely stunned. Sunday came, and Stella decided to secretly follow Ikki to his date. When Shizuku noticed her, she told Stella to read the room, but Stella fired back that Shizuku was the one trying to get a room with her own brother, which was way worse. That's when Alice walked up and introduced himself to Ikki. Ikki immediately asked, "Wait, are you a guy?" And Alice casually said yes, at least biologically. While they were out shopping, something terrible started happening. The mall's security system was hacked, and a bunch of masked bandits began storming the place. Inside the bathroom, Alice heard footsteps and quickly covered Ikki's mouth to hide. A bandit burst in and unloaded bullets into the stalls. Once the coast was clear, Alice used his shadow magic to pull them into a hidden space and explained that the girls out there were in serious danger. Alice summoned his tiny blade and cut open a rip in space-time so they could move secretly. As they sneaked through the mall, they found the security guards already dead. Ikki contacted the director to ask permission to use his weapon. She approved but warned him that these bandits weren't here for money, they had some other goal. Meanwhile, back with the hostages, Shizuku whispered to Stella that she had a plan if they could just stay hidden a little longer. But then, one of the bandits kicked a woman down, and her son threw his ice cream at him, trying to protect her. The man kicked the boy away and was about to hurt him, but Stella couldn't just sit and watch anymore. She revealed herself and blasted the bullets with her fire dragon. The thugs started shooting at her, but their bullets couldn't touch her. Then, their boss showed up. He smiled and introduced himself as Bishu. He told Stella it was an honor to meet a royal like her. But when he saw the injured child, he yelled at his own teammate not for hurting the kid, but for blaming the child instead of the parent. He then pointed his gun at the mother and threatened to kill her. Stella rushed in to stop him, but it turned out to be a trap. Bishu activated a special magic called Judgment Ring, which let him absorb Stella's own firepower and reflect it back at her. He told her she was useless and gave her a sickening choice. If she wanted to save the woman, she'd have to take off her clothes and bow down in front of everyone. Ikki wanted to help right away, but Alice stopped him. He said that jumping in now might get the others killed and told Ikki to trust his sister. Meanwhile, Stella was slowly taking off her outfit. Bishu laughed and said she still hadn't removed the most valuable piece. Just when things were at their worst, Shizuku finished her magic spell. She summoned a huge wall of water that surrounded the hostages and protected them. That was Ikki's cue. He drew his sword, Intetsu, and jumped over the railing. Bullets flew past him, but he didn't stop. Ikki made a huge sacrifice. He gave up his ability to see colors so he could boost his visual focus. He quickly figured out that Bishu's weak spot was his left hand. Dodging more bullets, he sprinted along the railing and jumped straight at Bishu, slicing him before the man even knew what happened. Ikki said, "You can't use your powers if you can't see your target." When Bishu tried to fight back, Alice used his magic to trap him in place. At the same time, Stella had already beaten up the rest of the goons. Everything seemed safe again, so Ikki ran to hug Stella. But just as they relaxed, one last enemy hiding among the hostages stood up and pointed his gun at a woman. Before he could pull the trigger, a mysterious voice echoed through the air, and beams of light struck down the attacker. Stella looked around, confused. Where did that come from? A man stepped out from the shadows, dropping his invisibility spell. Ikki instantly recognized him. It was Kirahara. Outside the mall, all the girls ran over to Kirahara, thanking him for saving them. Ikki walked over to say thanks too, but Kirahara cut him off. He said it was his job to protect the weak and asked if Ikki really planned to keep being a knight with such pathetic skills. Stella snapped, yelling that Ikki was way stronger than Kirahara, but Kirahara just laughed in her face. He called Ikki a coward who ran away last time they fought. Just then, Ikki's phone beeped. He looked down and saw that Kirahara was going to be his first opponent in the tournament. Kirahara grinned and said, "Don't run this time, loser." On the very first day of the selection matches, Stella went up against a guy wearing thick, heavy knight armor. But before anything started, she looked straight at him and warned that his armor was useless against her fire. That alone was enough. He got scared and quit the match before it even began. Just like that, Stella won her first fight without even having to lift a finger. Back in the dorm, Ikki sat down to watch battle recordings of Kirihara's previous matches. Every clip showed Kirihara beating his enemies using his deadly arrows. At one point, Ikki got spooked just imagining himself being the one dodging those invisible arrows. While he kept watching, Stella noticed him and asked if he would really be okay in his match. Without hesitating, Ikki confidently said he would win, which completely caught her off guard. While running through the school grounds to clear his mind, Ikki couldn't stop thinking about what happened last year. That's when Alice showed up and asked him about the rumors floating around. Ikki decided to tell Alice the whole truth. Under the last school principal, the powerful Kurogane family had been trying to get him expelled. Once Kirahara heard about it, he started targeting Ikki on purpose. One day, Kirahara challenged him to a duel, but when Ikki refused, Kirahara summoned his weapon and started firing arrows at him anyway. Even though Ikki could have dodged or fought back, he didn't move. He knew that if he reacted, it would give the school a reason to kick him out. So, instead, he stood there and took every single hit. Because of that, he was able to stay enrolled. After hearing the story, Alice realized just how used to pain Ikki had become, and as a friend, Alice quietly wished that someday someone would show up who could hear the silent pain Ikki hid deep inside. The big day finally arrived. Before the match, Shizuku noticed Ikki's shoelaces were untied. Alice gave him a silent thumbs up and wished him good luck with hand signs. In the waiting area, a staff member asked Ikki to agree to the match rules, including the high risk of injury. He accepted without hesitation, surprising a girl nearby who said nobody had ever agreed that quickly before. But Ikki knew who his opponent was and how dangerous he could be. When the girl realized Ikki already figured out her identity, she suddenly teleported beside him and flirted, asking if he wanted a private training session. 30 minutes before the match, Ikki sat in the waiting room trying to calm his mind. He focused on all the painful memories that had made him stronger. But instead of calming down, he accidentally got lost in those thoughts. Before he knew it, time had passed, and his name was called. He didn't even realize 30 minutes had gone by. Ikki walked into the battle arena and stepped to the center. Kirahara couldn't believe his eyes. The worst one actually showed up. As the battle started, Kirahara summoned his bow. Ikki responded by summoning his sword, Intetsu. Kirahara mocked Ikki's face, saying he looked awful. Then he pretended to play the piano just to mess with him, before activating his special skill, Area Invisible. With that, all his arrows became completely invisible. Even though it was a dirty trick, Ikki's sharp reflexes helped him track the arrows and block them. He even got close to Kirahara, but none of his attacks landed. Kirahara reminded Ikki not to get cocky. Then he disappeared again and announced where he would shoot next. Right thigh, he shouted and landed a perfect hit. Left arm, he yelled and struck again. Ikki didn't understand what was happening. Kirahara then bragged that this year, even the arrows themselves were invisible. Suddenly, one arrow came from behind and hit Ikki's hand, knocking him to the ground. Watching from the stands, Stella was frustrated. She couldn't understand why Ikki was fighting so badly. He had just stood there at the start of the match, giving Kirahara time to activate Area Invisible. But Alice explained it wasn't that simple. Ikki was too nervous to think clearly or act fast. Stella was shocked. She had always seen Ikki as super confident. But now she remembered something. Ikki had always pretended to be sure of himself, but he never actually believed in himself. Alice added, even acting normal in this moment. That's how Ikki's soul is screaming. Back in the match, Kirahara kept mocking Ikki. He reminded him that the only way he could ever graduate was by winning the 7 Stars Sword Festival, something that seemed impossible. The whole audience started laughing at Ikki, calling him the worst one, over and over again. Stella had had enough. She stood up and shouted to Ikki, telling him not to lie there looking like a failure. She reminded him that he always carried himself with pride and confidence. So why was he just laying there now? She asked, where's all that riz you used to have? Hearing her words, Ikki suddenly got back up and punched himself in the face. He thanked Stella for believing in him. Kirahara announced that his next shot would aim straight for Ikki's head. But now, something had changed in Ikki. He started yelling, pushing himself to full focus. As Kirahara fired, Ikki calculated everything: the spot of each wound, the angle, the power behind every shot. Then, just as the arrow was about to strike, a powerful wind blew around him. When the dust cleared, Ikki was standing there holding the arrow in his hand. Everyone was stunned. Kirahara was in complete shock. Ikki said that he could now see everything. He had studied Kirahara's entire technique so deeply that he could now track every move, every trick, every arrow. This new ability was called Perfect Vision. Now in full control, Ikki rushed toward Kirahara. Kirahara panicked and used his strongest attack, Million Rain, a storm of countless invisible arrows. But Ikki dodged them all and even deflected some right back at him. Even Kirahara's ultimate arrow got sliced clean in half. Kirahara, terrified, started begging him to stop. But Ikki charged at him, destroying the ground beneath them with one final strike. The blade missed Kirahara's face by just 1 millimeter. Ikki said calmly, I've still got a long way to go. The crowd, who once called him the worst, now cheered loudly for him. Ikki turned to smile at Stella, but his strength finally gave out. He collapsed. Later that night, Ikki woke up in a hospital bed. He saw Stella sitting next to him, but she had fallen asleep and was drooling a little. When she woke up and realized he saw her like that, she freaked out and started throwing pillows at him. Ikki laughed and said sorry for making her worry. Stella yelled back that she wasn't worried at all. Then Ikki got serious. He told her he liked her, that he was really glad they met. Stella's face turned red. She admitted that she liked him too, not just his fighting but all of him. She told him to close his eyes and kissed him on the cheek. Afterward, Ikki quietly asked if this meant she really liked him back. She gave a small nod. He pulled her into a hug. In that moment, he felt like he could overcome anything, even the impossible. As they held each other close, Ikki whispered that when they both make it to the final round, he wanted to fight her again. Stella smiled and agreed. She said, next time I won't lose. And just like that, they made a promise between them. 2 weeks had passed since that emotional hospital moment, and Stella was now training by herself. She kept thinking back to that night and was getting annoyed. Even though they had confessed their feelings, nothing romantic had actually happened between them. No kisses, no hand-holding, nothing lover-like at all. It was driving her crazy. Meanwhile, Ikki had been dominating the selection matches. He'd already won 5 in a row, and the title of the worst one had been dropped. Now people had started calling him another one, instead a sign of respect. The next day, during class, Kagami, the school reporter who was always in everyone's business, told Ikki she wanted to learn how to become a better swordsman. She even asked if they can see his sword. Stella, sitting nearby, almost exploded with rage and was seconds away from burning down the entire school. But Ikki, not reading the room, casually agreed to help Kagami. Kagami instantly started writing tomorrow's headline, Ikki to teaching girls. From across the room, the other male students who were mostly awkward, bitter guys got super jealous and started whispering about how Ikki was stealing all the girls. Right then, their teacher Yuri walked in and immediately started coughing up blood in the middle of class. Later that night, back at their dorm, Stella tried asking Ikki if they could finally do some couple stuff. But before she could even finish talking, she realized he was already fast asleep, totally knocked out. She just stood there frustrated, talking to herself while he snored away. The next morning, Ikki began teaching sword techniques to the girls who had signed up, focusing on balance and core strength. While Kagami asked him questions for her report, a group of bitter male students jealous of all the attention he got surrounded him. One of them even pulled out a gun-like weapon. But when they attacked, Ikki easily blocked every single strike and sent them flying. When the leader tried to fire his weapon, Ikki flicked a tiny pebble that jammed the gun. Then he walked right up to him and clapped in his face, making the guy freeze in fear. The boys realized how hopeless they were and fell to their knees. They admitted they were just desperate losers and begged Ikki, their alpha, to teach them how to get girls. Kagami called them gross, but Ikki still agreed to help. So now even these guys joined his training group. But then, some girls from the back, including one wearing glasses who seemed super clingy, also wanted Ikki to teach them. When Stella saw this, she asked if he could train her too. But Ikki turned her down. She looked hurt and ran off before he could explain. Stella was heartbroken. She thought maybe he didn't want to be with her anymore. While she wandered the school, sulking, Alice ran into her and asked if Shizuku had beaten her again. Trying to cheer her up, Alice handed her a dating sim game and told her to try it. That night, Stella started playing the game. As she played, she realized how badly she wanted to be close to Ikki. In the game, she could actually say what she wanted, hold hands, kiss, even playfully joke about doing other things with him. It made her sad she couldn't be that honest in real life. Right in the middle of her playing, Ikki walked into the room. Stella screamed at him for not knocking, but Ikki casually told her they were going to the pool tomorrow for training and asked if she wanted to come. She yelled back that he wasn't even training her, so why bother? Ikki finally explained why he hadn't offered to train her. He told her something personal, that she was already beyond his level. He didn't want to treat her like a regular student. He wanted her to be the only one who could go beyond his expectations. After hearing that, Stella sat next to him on the bus the next day with a soft smile, feeling special again. Shizuku, sitting nearby, looked suspicious and wondered what they had done last night. As she stared at her brother, Stella remembered his exact word show. He wanted her to be the only one who could surpass him. That made her realize he really did love her. At the pool, the students were finally relaxing. Kagami started bringing up gossip again, and the girls began showing off their swimsuits. Alice arrived too but got booed by the crowd for no reason. Meanwhile, Stella jokingly told Shizuku she could use her body like a surfboard. Shizuku clapped back, saying Stella's inflatable body was better used as a pool float. While all that was happening, the group of guys watching Ikki training in the water started crying tears of joy. They were so proud to have followed him this far. But across the pool, a mysterious girl watched them all silently. Later, during training, Ikki told everyone to dive into the water. Stella, trying to act chill, bounced a beach ball on her chest until it slipped out of her hands and smacked the mysterious girl right in the face. Wanting some alone time with Ikki, Stella dove into the pool while he was busy teaching others. But Kagami interrupted, asking how far Stella had gone with Ikki. Stella choked on water, gasping for air. She shouted that a princess like her would never do anything indecent. Kagami saw this as her chance to steal Ikki away and whispered that Stella wasn't doing a good job protecting her territory. Stella yelled that Ikki was her boyfriend and not up for grabs. Kagami smirked and asked what they did at night, wondering if Ikki used his ultra instinct in bed. Blushing like crazy, Stella admitted they hadn't even kissed yet. Kagami screamed, "Then kiss him already?" Stella was too embarrassed. She didn't want to look like some desperate girl, but Kagami warned her that guys might run away if she waited too long. Stella panicked. She didn't want that either. Kagami told her she'd give her a chance and ran off to find Ikki so they could talk. When the two were finally alone, Ikki asked what she wanted to talk about. She stuttered and instead asked how he felt about her swimsuit. But Ikki got serious. He said he wanted to talk about their relationship and asked if it was okay to keep going the way they were. Hearing that, Stella's heart sank. She thought maybe he had fallen out of love. She started crying and told him that maybe their relationship wasn't working. When he tried to hold her, she slapped his hand away. She told him it felt like he wasn't satisfied with her. Ikki, confused, thought she was the one pushing him away. Finally, Stella confessed, "I actually really like you." Ikki replied, "I like you even more." Stella was stunned. "Then why haven't you done anything in 2 weeks?" Ikki said he didn't want her to think he was some creepy guy only after her body. Stella replied that she didn't want to look like a loose girl and risk being rejected. Both of them had been scared of making the first move. Ikki shouted, "Why are we even fighting?" Stella yelled back, "I don't know." After calming down, Ikki told her, "Let's both say what we really want," at the same time. So, with background music playing in their hearts, they both shouted, "Kiss," and finally kissed. Later, on the bus ride home, they sat next to each other, quietly holding hands. Suddenly, both their phones buzzed. The next match was announced. Their upcoming opponents were members of the student council. In the shadows, the same mysterious girl from the pool smiled. A few days later, Renren, one of the council fighters, was running at full speed, trying to break the sound barrier. On another part of the field, Saiju spun his giant blade, stacking weight into his attack. He warned Stella that she wouldn't be able to block it. When the match started, Saiju charged with his heavy swing, while Renren dashed in lightning fast. Ikki held Renren back while Stella completely shattered Saiju's sword. She looked at him and told him confidently that she could take on everything he had. With both student council members defeated, their swords broken and pride shattered, Ikki and Stella stood victorious while the mysterious girl continued to watch them silently from afar. After the latest matches ended, Shizuku walked up to Ikki and asked if she'd apply medicine on his wounds. But Stella stayed silent. She couldn't tell anyone they were dating yet. Meanwhile, Alice noticed a strange girl hiding behind a corner. When they all turned to look, the girl panicked, tripped, and tumbled right into the river. Later, at the hospital, the girl apologized for spying on them and said she had been hiding this whole time. She introduced herself as Ayatsuji Ayase. The moment Ikki heard her last name, he realized something. She was the daughter of the famous swordsman, Ayatsuji Kaido. When Ikki asked how her dad was doing, Ayase quietly told him that her father was hospitalized. Even though things were rough for her, Ayase was happy that someone like Ikki knew her father's name. She told him she wanted to get stronger and asked him to train her. The next day, Ikki agreed to help. As she attacked him during practice, he easily dodged her moves but noticed she had solid basics. Still, he made her stop right away when she almost hit his neck. That's when he figured out her problem. Ayase was copying her father's sword style exactly, but her body wasn't the same. Because men and women are built differently, her version of the technique had flaws. Ikki explained that if she continued down this path, she would never be able to use her dad's moves properly. But Ayase didn't care. She still begged him to help her fix it. So, he agreed. Ikki got her into a new stance and started adjusting her leg positioning. To the other girls watching, it looked super awkward, like Ikki was way too hands-on. He kept moving her legs into the right position and lightly touching her skin to help align her form. Ayase was doing her best to focus, but she was blushing hard and struggling to stay calm. After a while of adjustments, she was overwhelmed and froze in place, but at that moment, the new stance finally clicked. Ikki told her to try again. She swung once, and with perfect precision, blocked his strike and aimed her blade at his neck. She was amazed. It felt like he had just fixed a problem she'd been battling with her whole life. Stella, watching from the side, was not happy seeing another girl so close to Ikki again. That night, Ikki apologized to Ayase if he had made her uncomfortable by touching her so much, but she smiled and said she didn't mind. She said his hands reminded her of her dad, strong, but also gentle and careful. Later, Stella was still thinking about the new girl. She asked Shizuku if Ayase was bothering her too. But Shizuku shrugged and said she was fine with it. At least Ayase was better than a certain fat cow, always trying to milk her brother. Stella called her mature for someone so small, and Shizuku fired back by calling her fat. That night, Stella asked Ikki how it felt to grope another girl's body. Ikki didn't know how to answer, but she reached for his hand and waited for his reply. He swore it wasn't anything weird, that he was just helping with training. Stella admitted she was jealous, but Ikki reassured her that she was the only one he loved. Then, she stood on her toes and kissed him softly. The next morning, Ayase and Stella were sparring with wooden swords while Ikki watched from the side as they practiced using his sword. Later, Ayase invited everyone to her place for dinner. While eating, Stella was scarfing down food like she hadn't eaten in days, saying her body needed that much fuel just to function. But then, a group of rough-looking guys showed up. One of them walked straight to Ayase and said it had been a long time. Ikki could tell she was uncomfortable, so he stepped in and asked them to leave. But the leader noticed Ikki was a swordsman and pretended to be polite, offering him a drink. When Ikki reached for the wine, the man suddenly slammed the bottle against Ikki's head, yelling that a real swordsman should never drop his guard. A waiter tried to call the cops, but a student council member silently stopped him. The gang's leader smirked and said he was just looking for another swordsman to crush. Stella was about to burn him alive, but Ikki held her back and played it off like it was no big deal that his hand had just slipped. The whole gang started laughing at how weak he acted. The leader got close and even spat near Ikki, but Ikki stayed calm. That annoyed the guy, so they all left. As they walked off, Stella was confused. Why didn't Ikki fight back? He told her that if he had used his weapon, he would have been expelled. Plus, he sensed that the gang leader was strong, way too dangerous to take on without a sword. Later that night, as they walked together, Stella asked who those people were. Ayase stayed quiet, and Ikki gently said, "If something's wrong, I'll help you no matter what." Right before Ayase could respond, their phones buzzed. Ikki's next match had been announced, and it was against Ayase. Elsewhere, in a dark room, the gang leader known as Sword Eater felt something weird was going on. A few days passed, and Stella noticed that Ayase hadn't shown up to any recent matches. Shizuku mentioned that might be a good thing for Stella's sake. Later, Alice warned Ikki that Ayase had no chance of winning against him, so she might try something desperate. Ikki nodded and showed him a message Ayase had sent. She asked him to meet her on top of the school building at 3 a.m. That night, Ikki went to the rooftop and found Ayase waiting. She brought up the promise he made to Stella and asked, "What would you do if you had to fight someone you could never beat?" Ikki replied that he would still give it everything he had, and fight fairly no matter what. Ayase disagreed. She said she'd do anything to win. Then she ripped open the gate behind her and let herself fall. But before she hit the ground, Ikki activated Ito Shurihi's strongest move and caught her just in time. The two of them landed in the school's swimming pool with a splash. As they climbed out, Ayase realized he had just used his trump card, and Ikki finally understood what had just happened. She had tricked him into using his ultimate move, knowing that he could only activate it once every 24 hours. Now, with less than 10 hours left before the match, he couldn't use it again. It was her only chance to beat him. Ikki asked her why she would throw away her sword style's honor like that, but Ayase didn't answer. She turned away and walked off while Ikki collapsed from exhaustion. Later, Stella had a strange dream. In it, Ikki kissed her, then started proposing. She smiled in her sleep, only to wake up and realize Ikki's head was lying on her chest. She thought for a second maybe her dream was coming true, but then she noticed something was wrong. Ikki wasn't breathing well. Hours later, he woke up in the hospital, panicking about missing the match, but there were still 4 hours left. The school director entered and Ikki immediately confessed that he was responsible for destroying the building. She sat him down and finally told him the truth about Ayase. 2 years ago, Ayase's father, the famous swordsman known as the Last Samurai, lost a duel and was sent into a coma. The man who defeated him was Sword Eater. As part of their agreement, Sword Eater took ownership of their dojo. Ayase had never forgiven him. She remembered how her father always told her to fight fairly and stay true to her pride. But the way Sword Eater kicked her out like trash made her furious. Even while lying in the hospital, her father whispered, apologizing to her. But Ayase held his hand and told him that she would take everything back one day. Back outside the office, Ikki stood tall, ready for his match against her, but first, there was one final thing he needed to be sure of. The big match was finally about to begin. Even the commentator Yuri, who always coughed up blood, was back to commentate again, so it was clear things were about to get serious. The arena gates opened, and both Ikki and Ayase stepped in. Ayase looked at him and said she was surprised at how focused and ready he seemed to win, but Ikki ignored her completely. Without saying a word, he summoned his sword. As soon as she pulled out her own sword, the match officially began. Ikki dashed in, hoping to land the first hit, but before he could even get close, 5 cuts suddenly appeared on his body like they came from nowhere. Then, when he landed, another slash hit his back. He gritted his teeth, stood up again, and managed to block her next swing. Their blades clashed for a second before he jumped back, realizing something was wrong. He figured out that Ayase had set up hidden traps all over the arena before the match began. Inside Ayase's own thoughts, she smirked, knowing exactly where all her traps were. She told Ikki there was nowhere for him to run now. Ikki kept dodging and backing away, but Ayase was happy the audience and commentators hadn't figured anything out. Just when she thought he'd walk right into a trap, Ikki dodged again, but while he was in midair, one of her traps sliced straight across his arm. It was getting dangerous. If one more hit landed in the wrong spot, he could die. Ayase kept charging in, trying to finish him, but Ikki barely kept her back. She cast a huge tornado at him, trying to knock him out completely, but when the dust cleared, she was shocked. Ikki had blocked the tornado using just the hilt of his sword. He had baited her in using a skill called irregular guarding. He told her she was exactly the type of person he expected. Earlier that day, he had even visited Yuri and told her that Ayase might try to cheat. Yuri had said that if Ayase cheated, Ikki would automatically win. But when she coughed blood, as usual, Ikki told her to ignore anything strange and let the match go on. He still believed Ayase had goodness in her. During the fight, Ikki realized that Ayase wasn't fighting like herself. She had tossed aside everything he had taught her during training. That's when Ikki made a decision. He told her, "If you've forgotten your pride, I'll bring it back using everything I've got." He rushed forward. Ayase activated more traps, but Ikki's perfect vision helped him dodge everything perfectly. She panicked and used all her remaining traps at once, turning the battlefield into chaos. But Ikki sliced right through the smoke. Just as she raised her sword, he disappeared from her sight. Using a move called Shinkiro, Ikki completely outmaneuvered her and defeated her cleanly. Ayase dropped to her knees, stunned and hurt. She asked herself why she was so weak again and started crying. But Ikki told her the truth: she wasn't truly fighting from her heart. She had been lying to herself this whole time. Still, he said he'd help her take back everything she lost. Ayase couldn't understand how he could still be willing to help her after everything. Ikki simply said, "I don't need a reason to help a friend." He held out his hand to her. Tears still in her eyes, she reached out and accepted it. She saw her father in him, the same kind of strong and kind man. Ikki smiled and said, "Those are the words I was waiting to hear." The next day, Ikki went with Ayase to her old dojo place that had been stolen from her. As they walked, she began telling him what really happened that day. It was during a terrible storm. Her father, the great swordsman, known as the Last Samurai, was in a fierce duel against Sword Eater. He had tried everything, every strike, every skill, but Sword Eater deflected all of it. When he shoved Ayase's father back, her father said he couldn't forgive a man like that and ran back in for one final clash. Sword Eater asked him, "Is that all the power you've got?" And that triggered something in Ayase's dad. He unleashed an insane flurry of sword attacks, but Sword Eater still blocked them all. Her dad began coughing up blood during the fight. Still, he told Ayase not to interfere. He said he would show Sword Eater the full power of the Ayatsuji Aikido style. He lunged one final time, but just as his move was about to land, he coughed again. Sword Eater took that chance and struck, but stopped his blade just short. Her father collapsed in Ayase's arms, defeated. His last words were, "I'm sorry." Sword Eater walked away and said, "This place won't belong to you anymore." That was the day Ayase swore she would get revenge. Eventually, they reached the dojo. It was totally trashed, left in ruins by Sword Eater's gang. Inside, Sword Eater waited for them. Ikki challenged him right away, saying he was stepping in to win back the dojo for Ayase. Ikki threw down a pile of ID cards, proof that he had already beaten all of Sword Eater's goons, to show he was worthy of the fight. Sword Eater accepted and summoned his sword, Orochimaru. It nearly killed him during the summoning, but he managed to tame it. Ikki summoned Intetsu, and the real battle began. Sword Eater rushed in first, swinging with full strength. Ikki blocked, but just barely. The attacks came in hard and fast, and Ikki was being pushed back. When Ikki found a chance to attack, Sword Eater reacted with perfect timing and blocked it again. From a distance, Sword Eater sent his serpent-like sword flying toward Ikki. He knew Ikki struggled with long-range fighting. Still, Ikki pushed forward. When Sword Eater tried to sneak behind him for a surprise hit, Ikki's perfect vision helped him dodge and counter, but Sword Eater still avoided the strike. Then, with a fake-out move, Sword Eater slashed down and suddenly changed the direction at the last second, barely missing Ikki's head. Ikki finally understood what Sword Eater's true strength was: reaction time. He explained to the crowd that average humans take 0.3 seconds to respond to anything. Super fast fighters like Stella and Ikki could react in 0.1 seconds. But Sword Eater, he reacted faster than 0.05 seconds. That meant he could attack, block, and switch moves faster than anyone could see. This ability was called marginal counter. Sword Eater began launching attacks from two directions at once. Ikki barely defended himself using irregular guarding, but then Sword Eater got even faster, unleashing 4 attacks at once. Ikki knew he couldn't block all of them. Suddenly, his foot slipped on the platform, and that small accident actually saved his life from a fatal strike. Sword Eater was using moves at a national tournament level. He told Ikki he would end things now. More cuts slashed across Ikki's body. He was covered in wounds, but even then, Ikki smiled. From a distance, Ayase watched him fight, noticing how he was barely holding on. It reminded her of how her father lost. She was about to run in, but Stella stopped her. Stella said she wanted to stop him too, but Ikki was smiling because he loved this. He lived for the challenge of defeating someone stronger, no matter the risk. She said, he's happiest when he's fighting someone strong, even if the odds are terrible. Ayase looked closer and saw it too. Ikki wasn't scared, he was enjoying it. Stella said, maybe your father wasn't full of regrets. Maybe when he said I'm sorry, he was apologizing for ending it too soon, not for losing. Ayase finally understood. Her father didn't lose his pride, he just ran out of strength. She realized she hadn't been a true knight. Not until now. Meanwhile, the fight continued. Ikki noticed something: the one weakness Sword Eater had was stamina. All those crazy speed moves drained his energy fast. Both fighters slammed their swords into the ground, breathing heavy. Ikki smiled and said, I've been waiting for someone like you. This is the kind of fight I never want to end. Then he shouted, I'll take those 2 years back. Sword Eater launched his final attack. Ikki dashed in with everything he had. In that moment, Sword Eater realized what Ayase's father was trying to show him that day. Their swords clashed with full power. When the dust cleared, blood hit the floor. Ayase stared at the scene, realizing what had just happened. The move Ikki used was the secret technique of her family Tenhi Muho, the true essence of their sword style. Ayase wondered, how did he learn that? Stella answered, it's blade steel. He learned it from your match. Ayase looked at Ikki's back and thought, that's someone worth following. As the dust faded and Ikki's sword disappeared, Sword Eater stood still. Then he asked, what's your name? Ikki replied, Ikki Kurogane. Sword Eater nodded, turned, and said, we'll continue this fight at the 7 Stars tournament, and leaves. A few days later, Ayase told the selection committee the truth: she had cheated during her match with Ikki. Because of that, she was officially removed from the tournament. But right after, the committee received some surprising news from Ayase herself. Her father had finally woken up from his coma. With that case finally settled, Stella tried to grab Ikki's hand for a sweet, quiet moment. But of course, Shizuku and Alice popped up and blocked them, ruining the moment. Even though his fingers didn't reach hers, Ikki looked at his hand and smiled toward the sky. Somewhere else, Ayase held her father's hand for the first time in 2 years. In the following weeks, Ikki kept crushing every match. By the time he reached his 12th win, his new nickname, Another One, was known by everyone. Later that day, Ikki and Stella were headed off on a vacation. It was a special reward from the school director for all their wins. But neither of them noticed the sneaky little smirk the director gave them before they left. Stella was super hyped for this trip, dreaming of their first night together, and Ikki could already tell this trip was going to be long, and not just the bus ride. At the same time, Shizuku was also heading off on a trip to visit her parents. On the way, Stella sneezed and started to feel chilly, so Ikki gave her his jacket. She was happy they were finally acting like a real couple. But as they walked, Ikki spotted some strange figures in the distance and had a bad feeling. Next thing they knew, Stella was scrubbing floors in the student council's building. Turns out, this place was going to be used as the training ground for the upcoming 7 Stars tournament. But Stella wasn't thrilled. She realized she wasn't going to get any romantic plot development here like she hoped. Meanwhile, Shizuku reached her parents' mansion and was so into her brother that she even named her cat Ikki. Back at the training house, Stella told everyone they were going to visit a waterfall. Renren asked if she was going alone with Ikki. Before leaving, Ikki noticed that Stella was burning up literally. She looked sick, but she brushed it off and said she was fine. While climbing the mountain, Ikki turned around and saw Stella stumbling. He knew something was wrong. After all, she only ate 2 bowls of rice instead of her usual 7, which was a huge red flag. Still, Stella yelled that she didn't want to go back. This might be their first chance to finally be alone. Meanwhile, at her mansion, Shizuku's dad asked to talk with her in private. Back on the mountain, the weather got worse. Ikki stopped, and Stella finally admitted she was dizzy. Then she said something wild, maybe the kiss they had earlier made her pregnant. Ikki called her baby for thinking like that, but told her she probably just had a cold. But as a royal, Stella had never caught a cold before. Her breathing got heavy. It started pouring rain, and Ikki quickly picked her up and ran. Someone in the forest was secretly watching them. Ikki found an old abandoned cabin and carried her inside. He tried to warm her up and checked her forehead. She had a raging fever. Since her clothes were soaked, he told her to take them off. She was too embarrassed to move, so Ikki started undressing too, hoping to make her more comfortable. She laughed. This reminded her of the first time they met. Still, Ikki helped her remove her plot armor one by one, and so plot developed. More and even more plot developed. Then she suddenly asked, "Do you want to do it?" Ikki froze. This was was finally about to become a real man. He asked if she truly wanted this. Stella looked at him and said yes. As Ikki held her, he told her he wanted to someday proudly introduce her as his girlfriend. But if they crossed that line right now, he didn't think he could ever face either of their families again. Stella understood. She told him that his hesitation was proof that he really cared, and she thanked him for taking their relationship seriously. Just then, Ikki's phone rang, and he stepped outside to answer. While he was gone, Stella thought to herself, if he had asked, she would have said yes to anything. Outside, the mysterious spy reported their location to some ugly, creepy fat guy who had been waiting for this moment. He smiled, knowing the fun was about to begin. Back at Shizuku's mansion, her father tried to talk, but she said she'd rather go back to her room. He told her he was proud of her for winning 12 matches. But those words only made her angry because he never once praised Ikki, who had also won 12 matches. She stormed out, slamming the door. Back at the cabin, Ikki suddenly heard loud shaking like an earthquake. He rushed outside and saw a huge golem towering over them, ready to crush the cabin. He activated Itoshura, picked up Stella, and got her to safety. Then, he summoned in Tetsu and attacked the golem with Sage, his first secret technique. The hit landed, but the golem didn't die. Instead, it broke into a bunch of smaller golems, each one just as dangerous. Ikki slashed through them again and again, but they kept regenerating. Eventually, they overwhelmed him. Stella screamed his name, and the golems charged at her. Just in time, Renren jumped in from above and crushed the golems heading for Stella. Saiju followed, taking out the rest with his giant weapon. They both fought hard. But Ikki realized these golems were being controlled by a remote blazer, someone using strings from far away. Before they could find out who, Tuka, the student council president, stepped up. She said she could trace the threads and find the source. She didn't even draw her sword, she just used pure skill to wipe out the rest of the golems. Then the final boss golem showed up. Without hesitation, Tuka activated her lightning move, Raikiri, and blasted it to pieces in one epic strike. Ikki stood there stunned. That was the strength of Hagen Academy's top knight, the 4th strongest fighter in the 7 Stars Festival. Elsewhere, Shizuku's phone buzzed. She saw the screen and gasped. Her next opponent was Tuka. The next day, Stella wondered how Shizuku would survive that match. After all, water conducts electricity. But Alice reminded her that Shizuku's water was incredibly pure, so pure. Lightning wouldn't work the same way. Still, even with that logic, Ikki just quietly hoped his sister would stay safe. The day of Shizuku's big match had finally come. As soon as she and Tuka stepped into the arena, Shizuku summoned her water blade without wasting a second. Tuka calmly followed by drawing her own sword, and just like that, the battle began. Both girls stood still, watching each other closely, waiting for the other to move first. From the announcer booth, Nene explained that both were being cautious, because even one wrong move could get them instantly knocked out. They stared each other down for minutes, until Shizuku finally made the first move, unleashing her water field to attack. Tuka quickly blocked the attacks and fired her own long-range strikes in return. Shizuku answered back by forming a massive wall of water to hold her back. Streams of water shot forward, but Tuka's lightning-fast steps dodged everything. No matter how much water Shizuku threw at her, Tuka had already figured out that Shizuku wouldn't be able to keep it up for long. She'd run out of energy eventually. So Tuka started closing the distance. Shizuku managed to freeze Tuka in place and launched a massive icicle right at her. But Tuka shattered the ice in one clean blow. Shizuku thought maybe Tuka was seeing something else entirely. Suddenly, Tuka flashed forward again. Shizuku barely dodged, and as Tuka slashed her down, it was revealed it was just a water clone. Shizuku had barely escaped. They faced off again, but this time Tuka vanished from sight and reappeared in front of her. Shizuku kept dodging, but the attacks got harder to predict. Meanwhile, Nene had vanished from the announcer's desk. Everyone noticed Shizuku getting slower. Stella, watching from the stands, asked why Shizuku wasn't reacting fast enough. Ikki explained, she can't see Tuka's attacks. Nene reappeared beside them and said, "Wow, you're pretty smart." She explained that Tuka was using a hidden martial arts skill called nukiashi. It's an ancient technique where, instead of reacting to everything the opponent does, the fighter buries themselves into the opponent's subconscious, only becoming visible when their life is in danger. It's like a teleport made possible through calm breathing and insane footwork. Because of that skill, Tuka's movements were basically invisible now, and with Shizuku's stamina almost gone, there was no way she could win. But Ikki still believed in her. He said she had something up her sleeve. Inspired by her brother's faith, Stella cheered Shizuku on. Shizuku cringed hearing Stella's voice calling her a fat cow, but in that strange way, it gave her strength. She couldn't let Stella be the one standing next to her brother at the top, not without a fight. Summoning all her water, Shizuku healed her injuries and stood tall. She was still unsure how to win, but she was now fully determined. When Tuka dashed forward again, Shizuku launched water bolts, blocked strikes, and summoned more icicle attacks. Tuka dodged everything and deflected them with lightning. As Shizuku fell to her knees from frozen hands, she still managed to block Tuka's purple lightning with thick pillars of ice. Tuka charged again, but it was another fake, just a water clone. Then more clones appeared and charged all at once. Tuka slashed through all of them, but that was the trap. As each clone exploded into mist, a thick fog filled the field. Shizuku flew through the air, hiding among the fog using her real body and the water clones. She finally launched her ultimate move. But Taka activated Raikiri, her lightning finisher, and broke through everything. The match ended. Shizuku's sword dropped. She fell unconscious. The 13th match was over. Shizuku had lost. As the arena sparkled with fading magic, Alice quietly asked if Ikki still thought his sister shouldn't push herself that hard. But Ikki just stared silently. He had seen everything. That last move wasn't some desperate swing, it was her only shot at victory. She risked it all, and still lost. Later that night, everyone waited at her bedside. When Shizuku finally woke up, she told them to leave. She was exhausted. Outside, Stella worried if she'd be okay. But Ikki was confident. He knew his sister had grown stronger. Back inside, Shizuku turned to see Alice sitting by her. She started yelling at him, but before she could finish, he pulled her into a warm hug. He told her, "You've done enough. You fought hard. You don't have to act strong around me." Shizuku finally let go of all the emotions she was hiding and broke into tears. Meanwhile, far across town, her father heard the news of her loss and coldly told a disgusting, greasy man to go ahead with the next step. A few days later, Stella celebrated her 14th win. As she and Ikki walked together under the sunset, she quietly wondered if all this training was finally making her stronger, even though it had been tough on her body. Ikki smirked and teased her, but she smiled and asked if he still remembered the promise they made. Ikki nodded. He told her he could never forget. He was going to win every match to stand at the top one day. As they kissed sweetly, someone in the shadows took a photo of them and smiled to himself like a creep. Later, the school director called Ikki into her office and asked if he knew someone named Akaza. Ikki said Yesh was connected to the Kurogane family and worked under his father. The director warned him, "Be careful." Akaza was now roaming the campus. Later that day, the student council called for Ikki and Stella. When they entered the room, Tuka was laying flat on the ground in the most awkward pose ever. She quickly screamed at everyone to clean up. Then she realized Ikki and Stella had just walked in and tried to play it cool. Stella, staring at her, pointed out that her skirt was barely covering anything and realized that Tuka was nothing like how she imagined the Great Lightning Knight would be. They visited the orphanage where Tuka had grown up. The kids were thrilled to see her again. One of them even recognized Stella's useless face from TV and ran to play with her. For the rest of the day, Stella and the council members played with the children while Ikki helped Tuka prepare lunch. As they cooked, Ikki mentioned he was glad his sister got to fight her. Misogi added something interesting. She said Shizuku had made Tuka remove her glasses. That's when Ikki figured it out. The worse Tuka's eyesight got, the stronger her powers became. Since brains are like circuits with weak electric signals, her lightning abilities allowed her to see those circuits, basically letting her read her opponent's thoughts and reflexes. As they finished cooking, Ikki caught himself staring at Tuka. Misogi smiled and told him, "That's the real her, not the lightning user, the real Tuka." She explained that when they were kids, one boy in the institution was violent and impossible to deal with. He hurt Tuka constantly, but she never abandoned him. Slowly, that boy changed. She had given him something he never had: kindness. Even now, Tuka remembered the love she once received. That's why she stayed at the orphanage to give the same warmth and courage to the kids who had nothing. She wanted to make sure they had happy memories to carry for life. As they all shared a warm meal, Ikki realized something important. Her strength wasn't for herself, it was for others. Later that evening, on the ride back, Ikki sat quietly and thought to himself, if that was where her strength came from, then where did his come from? When they arrived back on campus, Shizuku and the rest ran to Ikki, holding up the day's newspaper. Right there on the front page was a photo of him and Stella kissing under the sunset. The headline? School's top couple caught in a scandal. Out of nowhere, Akaza showed up and told Ikki that the Morals Committee had summoned him for an official hearing. Stella snapped and shouted at Akaza to get lost, but Ikki stayed calm. He reassured her it would be fine, got in the car, and left completely unaware of how bad the next few weeks would get. On June 28th, everything in the city felt dull and lifeless, like someone had drained all the color out of it. And the next day, June 29th, Ikki was officially locked up. During his first hearing, they bombarded him with questions like when exactly he started dating Stella. One of them even hinted that it was inappropriate to date a royal. But Ikki stood his ground and said they hadn't done anything wrong. Even when Akaza tried to shut him up, Ikki firmly said he truly loved Stella, and she loved him back. He wasn't going to let anyone twist that into something bad. The next day, June 30th, they threw him into solitary confinement. With no one to talk to and nothing but silence, Ikki spent his time trying to figure out what to do next. Meanwhile, Stella won her next match, but the public trashed her online, calling her disgusting for loving Ikki. Night after night, she couldn't sleep. 4 days into his isolation, Akaza forced Ikki to have his selection match inside the prison even though he hadn't eaten properly for days. Yuri was chosen as the referee, and on July 20, the match began. Outside, the media painted Ikki as some kind of heartless villain. Stella started blaming herself, wondering if their relationship was a mistake. But when Shizuku overheard Stella thinking like that, she snapped. Right in public, she yelled at her, saying Ikki was suffering all of this just to protect their relationship. It was everything to him. She reminded Stella how hard Ikki fought to protect their love and even called her pathetic for doubting him. That night, Stella quietly cut off a lock of her hair as a symbol of her commitment. On July 3, his 8th day of being locked up, Ikki managed to win his 16th match, but he collapsed afterward. Yuri caught him just in time and, while coughing up blood, secretly slipped something into his uniform. Back in his cell, Ikki checked what she had given him. It was that strand of Stella's hair. That tiny gesture lit a fire inside him. He realized Stella hadn't given up on him, and he wasn't going to hold back anymore. That same day, he requested to speak with his father, the head of the Kurogane family. Even though Akaza doubted him, the director approved the meeting. When Ikki faced his father, he was surprised to hear praise. His dad admitted that he was impressed Ikki kept winning against tough opponents. Feeling hopeful, Ikki confessed that all this time, he had been fighting for just one thing: to earn his father's recognition. But his father crushed that hope in seconds. He said Ikki was completely wrong. He had always acknowledged him, but not in the way Ikki thought. He explained that teaching skills to someone without natural talent is pointless. It just gives average people the illusion of greatness and spreads false hope. Those words broke Ikki. His father said people like him shouldn't rise above their limits because it only creates chaos in society. In fact, Ikki wasn't even a proper failure, just a waste of time. He told Ikki to stop trying altogether, since that's the only thing he was good at. Ikki couldn't hold back the tears. He realized he didn't even have a real connection to his own dad. That night, on the 11th day of his imprisonment, he still managed to win another duel. But inside, something felt empty. The one goal that had driven him all these years, getting his father's approval, was now gone. He kept going. By the time he hit his 19th victory, the final match was getting close. The director told Shizuku there was bad news. At the same time, Akaza announced that Ikki's last opponent would be Tuka. If Ikki won, it would prove everything: the lies, the charges, all of it wrong. But if he lost, he'd have to give up his dream of becoming a knight. That night, Shizuku visited Tuka after getting summoned. She knew the selection process had been rigged and begged Tuka to convince Ikki to back out. But later at home, Shizuku confessed to Alice that she had no clue what to do. Elsewhere, Stella was out in the rain, furious and upset, while Ikki was completely drained. The day of the final matches came. Only 6 winners would be allowed into the 7 Stars Festival. Among the chosen were the Vice President, Alice, Stella, and Ikki. The whole event was going to be broadcast live. Neni, meanwhile, had given up on her commentary role. When she looked up at the choppers flying overhead, she knew they were planning to humiliate Ikki publicly. Suddenly, an old man appeared, the god of war. He said he wasn't there just for Tuka, but also to see the son of Kurogane fight. Akaza appeared again, saying the match might get interrupted. The announcer then said Ikki hadn't arrived yet. If he didn't show up within 15 minutes, it would count as a loss. The director asked where the promised escort was, but Akaza claimed Ikki had left on his own. Still, he smugly said Ikki would probably make it unless he collapsed on the way. Meanwhile, Ikki was stumbling through the snow, barely able to walk. His body was weak, and the cold didn't help. His grandfather's words echoed in his mind: frustration means you're still trying. But a darker voice inside him argued back. saying those were just empty lies meant to push a failure too far. He started doubting everything: his strength, his technique, even his purpose. His fighting style, once a source of pride, now felt like a bunch of second-hand tricks. How could he ever stand up to someone like Tuka? But before he could give up, something lit up inside him, a flame. That fire reminded him why he kept going. In that moment, he saw a vision of Shizuku hugging him. She didn't want him to fight Tuka, but she also refused to hold him back from chasing his dream. People he had helped along the way began cheering for him in his mind. Shizuku reminded him that he wasn't alone. Stella even held up her medal to prove she still believed in their promise. That gave him strength. He remembered their goal to rise to the top of knighthood together. Misogi told Stella that Ikki had finally made it. In the arena, Tuka walked in, and right behind her, a beaten-up, starving Ikki appeared too. At the same time, Alice returned with his own victory medal, ready to compete as well. Neni noticed how bad Ikki looked, but he had made it. Right before the match began, Tuka apologized for not taking better care of Ikki, knowing he looked pretty beat up. But she also admitted she was too excited to fight Haimever. Since their first clash, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Ikki felt the same way, and promised not to let down anyone cheering for him. He was going to use his strongest attack from the start. As the battle kicked off, Ikki activated his special move Itushura. Everyone watching thought he was being reckless, but Stella knew exactly what he was doing. He planned to go all out in a single swing to finish the fight. Tuka expected him to charge straight at her, so she believed dodging him once would win her the match. But she didn't plan on letting him off easy either. Ikki only needed one chance, one moment. Everything went quiet and color faded as he poured everything he had into that final slash. With total respect for each other, both fighters gave it their all. Tuka unleashed her lightning strike Raikiri, and Ikki fired back with his own powered-up slash Raikou. When the light faded, Tuka had collapsed and Ikki was still standing. He had won. Everyone in the arena was stunned. Even Sword Eater, who was watching from outside, smiled proudly. Akaza was hit hard by the loss, but the old man known as the God of War admitted that Tuka hadn't held back at all. What surprised him more was that Ikki had managed to surpass his limits in the final second. The director explained that Itushura wasn't enough to beat Raikiri, so Ikki bet everything on one single, perfect blow, instead of spreading it over a minute. Nene even gave it a new name, Iturasetsu, the slash of a demon who eats other men. Ikki could barely stay standing, but there was something he needed to say. Meanwhile, Stella rushed through the crowd as Akaza tried to sneak up on Ikki with his sword. Stella blasted him back into the shadows just in time. When she finally got to Ikki, his sword disappeared, and he started to fall. She caught him in a hug and told him he did great. Ikki apologized for making her worry, but Stella said she was the dumb one because even though he was hurt and broken, she still loved him more than anything. That warmth she gave him, that love, was what kept him going all along. Right then and there, Ikki asked Stella to marry him. She said yes, and they kissed right in the arena. Even Shizuku, who always got mad about Stella, seemed a little relieved. Elsewhere, Ikki's father got a call from the Emperor of Vermillion, yelling at him to stop dragging their children into political games. The Emperor told him that real parents protect their kids, not use them. But Ikki's father didn't say a word. Later, during the qualification ceremony, 6 people were chosen to represent Hagon Academy at the Seven Swords Festival. That included 2 annoying twins, Alice, the vice president, Stella, and finally Ikki. Then Tuka stepped forward and announced that the group's leader would be Ikki. Surprised, Ikki asked why him, but the crowd shouted his name over and over, saying he was their true leader. He turned to Stella and admitted that he never used to care what others thought of him, but now, being recognized by everyone actually felt kind of nice. Later that day, when he and Stella sat down to talk about their future marriage, Shizuku butted in as usual, telling Stella to move her big legs out of the way. But Stella fired back, saying Ikki was hers now, and he didn't need his sister as a body pillow anymore. And so, after everything, they finally got their happy ending. And that's where this video ends. Watch this following video, and I'll see you in the next one.